This is In Touch with Terri, a power-packed podcast for the medical aesthetics industry.
I just discovered your podcast, and I feel like I've hit a gold mine.
This is someone who's got a lot of knowledge. She's been there, done that.
Terri Ross is a former Fortune 500 executive, international speaker, founder and co-CEO of Apex Platform, and Terri Ross Consulting.
Just listening to her energy and her passion and just how hardcore she is.
Her knowledge of the industry and just her connections in general are phenomenal.
In Touch with Terri will bring you solutions to increase operational and employee efficiency and practice profitability. Plus, feature some of the top industry experts as guests.
The Apex team literally changed the game for us.
Terri, your courses and your podcast are just so helpful.
She made me feel like I could do this.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Now, here's Terri.
Hello, everybody. How are you? And welcome back to another episode of In Touch with Terri. I know I say this on every podcast, so I hope that you don't get sick of it, but I truly mean it. You guys are the reason that I am here and behind everything that I do. Helping equip you guys with the tools and the resources and the valuable information to make your aesthetic practice thrive is always my why. So today I am super honored and it's going to be fun as hell. So get your pen and paper out, get a glass of wine, coffee, whatever you want. But I'm really honored to have a good friend of mine and just a fellow boss babe in the aesthetic space, Leslie Tracey. Hey girl, welcome honey. How are you?
Hey, I am fabulous. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Me too. Listen, we have been talking about this literally a year.
Yeah,
and,
just about.
Right? And we're making it happen. I love and respect her as just another female boss in the industry. And we're going to sit down and talk to Leslie today. She's the founder of the first financial practice solely focused on the medical aesthetic space. And, you know, we wanted to devote this podcast to you, which is really going to be, you know, are you practicing aesthetic medicine unprotected and how to manage risk? It's really, really important. You guys know there's a lot of things, people doing things, you know, the wrong way. And we're really going to dive into what her lifelong passion has been really helping people in the medical aesthetic industry, you know, protect your practice, retain and attract the best employees, and create an exit strategy on your own terms. So she's going to focus today on bringing a very unsexy topic of risk management, and she's going to make it sexy, kind of like I do with the data, right? It's not sexy, but when you're managing it, you know, it's the bomb. And how to build, you know, an exit strategy and a conversation she has with her clients. So Leslie, again, girl, thank you so much. I'd like to give her the credentials she deserves. Leslie's a national speaker and part of Galderma's business faculty. She's the host of the Diamond Hands Business Podcast for medical aesthetics, and she's the founder and CEO of two privately held companies, Tracy Donovan Insurance and Retirement Services, and again, her Diamond Hands Media Company. So she is known really, again, her boss babe, her down-to-earth, dynamic, engaging personality. And she really wants to talk to business owners about, you know, finding the future of their plans. So Leslie, again, welcome to the show and to my tribe. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Hey guys, listening.
So Leslie, you know, just before we kind of just dive in, tell us, you know, let the tribe tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you ended up getting into this.
Yeah. So my background is very, you know, around the way type of way, just like, you know, you were going to medical school and then you're like, let me do something else. So for me, it actually started in 2014. So I started working in financial services and I was just working with the general population. Like I still have some banks that are my clients and like things like that. Cause you know, you keep them on the books. They're not, you know, they're not going anywhere. And then, when I had actually moved to the Boston area, you know, I had so that was like around 2018, I met this woman named Audrey Rose. So she is an aesthetic provider and she was like, come to this event that I'm having. And she has a school for aesthetics. And so we went and I didn't know her from anywhere. I had met her on Instagram. But she had said that we were both the same person because we're both Jamaican and we both at the time had, you know, European men. So we were like the same
I like
person.
it.
It was kind of funny. I like it too. I like it too. So I went there and I was like, wow. I was like, these women, because it was primarily women at her event. I was like, these women are, sexy. They are intelligent, and they're, really making a difference in people's lives. And she had told me, she's like, Leslie, she's like, we need you in this industry. She's like, there's no one doing what you're doing. And so that's how I actually got started in the aesthetics industry. But if you want to back up before then, I actually studied English literature and music. So for those of you who don't know, I am a pipe organist and also a violinist.
Oh, girl, you might have to play us something next time. That's amazing.
I know. Tiffany always tries to be like, hey, play something at the conference. I'm like, girl.
Don't ask me to sing. Maybe I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. So, as I was building my business and despite anything that I was doing when I was in college, working full time or have you, I was always a music director. So I did that for 10 years and I only stopped during COVID,
Oh, you're kidding.
Wow, yeah, that was like amazing. It was like my thing. Cause I was like, if I'm going to go to church, I was like, I'm going to get paid to do it. Sorry guys. So that's what I did. But anyway, so that's my educational background. So English literature and music. I went to Western Connecticut State University. So that was in Connecticut. And so I was one of those strappy kids. I saved and I paid my way through school. So that's what I did. Anyways.
Yes. All right. So then your career, how did your businesses, both of your two companies, when did you start that and really kind of get your niche in this aesthetic space after meeting Audrey?
So the niche in aesthetics, with the financial services industry, that was 2018. And so that was, the impetus was Audrey Rose, like I told you about there. And then with Diamond Hands Media, we started that in 2020 because I was like, okay, we're already working with all these aesthetic providers already. I'm very creative, obviously, music, English literature, all that stuff. And I was like, and my business partner, he does video production. So we developed a team on that side. So we do the marketing for med spas for video only. We do all that. We cover conferences. So you might have seen our guys at Scale. You'll see us at Aesthetic Next, Science of Skincare. So that's that. So it's completely different things. On the media side, I do have great people on that side because I can't do both with the same intensity. I focus most of my time on the financial services side. But yeah, we have a team.
I love it. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so again, guys, we're going to talk today with Leslie about, really protecting your aesthetic practice and managing the risk. So Leslie, why is risk management so important? And why do you think that it's also probably very much neglected in this space?
Well, I think that it also depends on the level provider, I'll say, because I do find a difference between NPs, PAs, RNs, and their sophistication when it comes to those things. And I find a difference between, derms, plastic surgeons. This is a little bit different because I do believe that in the plastic surgery derm space, what I've been seeing is that, you're kind of taught like, okay, it's important to take care of some of these things. So I see sometimes it's more buttoned up there and they're used to that responsibility and being the lead in the head. But what I find for my RNs, NPs, PAs is that since they're not always used to being the head, they're not thinking about those things like, oh, I got to change things now since now that I'm leading and everything's dependent upon me and falling on my shoulders. So I think it just depends on which kind of area we're kind of focusing on. But I think it's not a sexy topic. No one wants to talk about risk management.
Let me ask you, I love that. Obviously, I've been on your podcast and, we both lecture and speak and listen, let's call it what it is. No, there's no bullshitting on this podcast. We all know that there's just a lack and no one's fault, right? People can go to be a doctor or a provider. They don't teach you these business fundamentals, right? Things that I teach and talking about risk management, it's not told anywhere or given anywhere. And you're right. I'm sure when you're a physician, it somewhere, whether it's your lawyer or somebody guiding you that this is important. And I appreciate because there is so many NPs now opening up their own facilities. What I loved about what you just said is that, different strokes for different folks in terms of how they get introduced to it. But how have you managed to, like me, I'm a big mouth. I want to spread the word and we want to help people. That's our sole intention. So how do we make this topic more relevant and more of a priority so that this is not something that's an aftermath or something, heaven forbid, happens and they're like, oh shit, but it becomes part of the infrastructure. And I think, God, again, I'm loving to collaborate with you because I think we have such a great opportunity to be able to do that in a proactive way, not a reactive way.
Exactly. I really think that it starts at the beginning of opening a practice. I'm like, and even when someone just starts to practice medicine, even it starts in residency, because there are things that can happen. So that, for example, I know one of your colleagues that talked to me about a plastic surgeon she works with. He got a bubble, behind his cornea. He may not be able to practice. She didn't mention any names or what have you, but she was just talking in a general fashion. But she had said when she was his practice manager that she had put together a disability policy for him to ensure that if something did happen, he would still get an income. He's not sure after this surgery if he's going to be able to practice anymore. And he's the backbone of that practice. So I think, even kind of looking at these things starts in residency, because all of these things, whether it's disability insurance or life insurance or what have you, all of these things are based on morbidity and mortality. And so it's like, as we go along in our lives, things can happen which disqualify us from having these things, And so I think it needs to even start in residency. It needs to be a conversation that's had when, they're in school, saying, you need to prepare for these things because you didn't spend $150,000 on education just for it to be washed away because you got in an accident or you got cancer or you got sick.
Yeah. I'm going to break it down even for those of you that don't even, and I don't even know that I actually know. I'm going to go back to like the basics right now. When we're talking, it's really, because I don't even know listen, some people would know. I'm not trying to be, that everyone doesn't know what this is. But when we think about what risk management is, what things fall under that category? What does that even entail?
So when you're thinking about risk management, that is going to be on a personal side and it's going to be on a business side. So we don't cover everything. Of course, on the business side, you're going to, of course, have your medical malpractice. You're going to have other property and casualty things that you're doing. We don't do that portion. What we're looking at is the people risk management, because everything is based on your people. So for example, for the business, if you have a business partner and you have a buy-sell agreement, okay, if something happens to you, if you get disabled or you pass away, your business partner is going to legally take over your share of the business, right? But how is that funded? Because not everyone has a sinking fund of, a few $100,000 or a few million or what have you to compensate for their share of the business. So we look at that. What would happen to the business if you passed away or were disabled? And we make sure that's funded by something. Okay. So that's risk. That's one type of risk on the business. And then we're like, okay, if you have a star revenue producer, so say, for example, you have a med spa department as a derm or a plastic surgeon, and you have, a star revenue producer who's doing really great and they bring in 40% of the revenue. What happens if that person gets disabled or they pass away? What happens to that revenue that they were bringing in? How do you ensure you have the funds available to replace that person without it taking a big hit to your business? And so it really depends on the practice size. The smaller the practice, actually, the more important this stuff is. When you have more infrastructure and you have things more spread out in a bigger practice, you may not have to worry as much, but you still have to be thinking about it.
What are some retention strategies that you implement with your clients? And can you give us an example?
Yeah. So one of them we call the executive bonus is kind of a golden handcuffs. So say you have a star injector or you have a star surgeon on your team or a derm, and you want to give them something else besides a 401k. You could do something called an executive bonus plan, right? And so that's something, because with a 401k, you can't discriminate. You can't say, hey, I'm going to give you more than, this other person. Everyone has a max that they can do in those benefit plans. So with an executive bonus plan, you can put something together and it's typically funded by life insurance or what have you. And so with that, you use a whole life policy. There's a cash value that accrues in there. And what you can do, you can say, all right, if you give me 10 years of service, this cash value that grew here, that is for you, but you have to give us the 10 years of service for this. And it's like a tax write-off. So you can do that. And then you could also do something called like a defined benefit plan. So a defined benefit plan is not only good for your employees, it's also good for you. So this gives them because, pensions are a thing of the past, as you know.
Right. Nothing's happening over there. Yeah.
Exactly. So those are things of the past. But what you can do with the defined benefit plan is that you can make sure that your employees are going to get a certain amount in their retirement or what have you. And so that's what a defined benefit means. And then they could also for you as a business owner, you could put up to $250,000 tax-free. And that's more than you could put into a 401k. And so I would say if you have your financial advisor, speak to them about that. But the financial advisors that I work with on my team, that's what they do. So those are some of the things. And then, of course, having typical employee benefit plans. That's kind of standard now, though, to have those things.
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah. Amazing. Okay. Why is estate planning and business succession planning so important when either opening up or trying to scale an aesthetic practice?
Well, I mean, it's a myriad of things, Terri. Estate planning, first of all, you should be doing that every single year. It's like, I have one of my mentors in the derm industry. He says that he does his every single year, his personal estate plan and his business succession plan, because his business grows every year and his assets grow every year. So he wants to make sure that things are allocated and going where they need to go if something happens to him. Right. And he has a very sharp and buttoned up plan. So estate planning is just making sure that if something were to happen to you tomorrow, that you're not going to, number one, have an estate tax issue. You may have that, for example, in Massachusetts, in Boston, if you have more than $1 million in assets, you're going to owe an estate tax. It's called, quote unquote, a death tax, or what have you. And you can speak to your lawyer about that, your estate planning lawyer. So that's something you have to think about. And so you want to make sure that all of your assets are going to your family in the way that is best for them, because your family taking over your business in most cases is not even legal.
Or the right thing to do, for God's sake.
Exactly. Right? Or the right thing to do. So overnight, they're going to be like, oh, I have this business. What do I do with it?
What to do? Yeah.
Maybe you have an MSO agreement if you're, or what have you, but all that structure has to be worked out in advance because things can happen. And then the business succession planning, you have to understand, if something were to happen to me tomorrow, who does this business go to next? Is it someone that I'm identifying in my practice? Or you could do a one-way buy-sell agreement. Is it another plastic surgeon or derm or NP or PA who's going to take over my practice and absorb it? So my clients actually go somewhere and they're not just left flapping in the wind.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
You said it in the beginning when you were talking about your derm mentor friend who does this annually. And I'm going to speak about it from both your perspective and mine and what we teach clients. But if they do it once, let's say they work with you and they do these things, is this something that should be reviewed every year for accuracy or any changes? Right? This isn't like a one and done and you forget about it. Right? Okay.
No.
Yeah. And you guys, Tribe, I want to just preface, like Leslie's giving away, like she's dropping diamonds out here for us. And if you don't, we'll talk about, something she's going to offer you guys at the end of this. So please stay tuned. But it's even interesting because I'm sure you hear it too. I don't know. I hear it. People will be like, well, I've had Apex or I've done the sales training. Well, it's not a one and done. Right? I mean, this is stuff that you have got to perfect and practice and role play and implement and execute and watch. And it's crazy sometimes that we choose to be an entrepreneur. We have a business, we have a practice, and we do these certain things well. And then sometimes we just are like, well, I did it. Well, guys, this is really important. So if you don't have any of these things, my God, please, I'm going to make sure you can get in touch with Leslie. But Leslie, what different vehicles are there for saving for future? And, what do you think about this whole M&A craze going on right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll tie that in, but there's quite a few vehicles you can use to save for your future self. If you may not be in a position to sell, because not everyone's in a position to sell, or they're in a position to sell, but they get a very low price because they haven't set up their business properly. And I know, Terri, you're really looking at those things and the numbers, that good old number, EBITDA, so you have to, look at those things because not everyone who thinks they're going to get a top dollar is going to get top dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the thing. So like, as far as, saving for retirement, like I said, you're going to want to work with your advisor on those things. If you have an advisor, you could contact me. Of course, we have our team that does that, but you could do things like, a simple IRA for yourself. If you make too much for that, you could do also a simple 401k. You could do a solo 401k if you're in practice by yourself. You can do, a defined benefit plan like I talked about before. You can do a SEP IRA, which I know a lot of you are very familiar with because you try to sock away some things and your CPA says, contribute this amount every year. But there's different things that you can do. There's about 6 or 7 different vehicles, and as Terri talked about, that will be included in that checklist. Most of you are probably doing these things already or a mixture of them, but there's some that you may not have done before that if you have an advisor, you're going to want to reach out to them and say, ooh, instead of using my Section 179 benefit, I could use this and the money's actually for me. So there's different things. Yeah. And then as far as like, I just want to kind of tie that back into the M&A thing. Just like some stats. This is a stat that is from it's like a 2019 Exit Planning Institute study that was done with physicians. And 83% of physicians do not have a written succession plan. That's a lot.
Oh my God, that is a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I need to have you do the masterclass. That's crazy.
Yeah. 49% have done no succession planning at all. They're just flapping in the wind.
Oh my God. See, guys, see tribe. I'm not making up. I'm not making this shit up, right? If 90% don't measure the data, look at these numbers. And it's, you know what though? What I love about these, and I want to let you finish, is just, it's such a room for opportunity, right? And that's what this podcast is for, to bring these things to light for you guys. So you're like, oh shit, I don't have that. I better call her or call my person and get it going.
And then 60% of physicians, said they would retire today if they could, but don't have the assets to actually retire today. Because like I said, retirement's a long time. So if you're getting out of the game at 70 and you're living until 90 or 95, that's a long time. And when you have all that time on your hands, you're not just going to be fiddling your thumbs. You're probably going to spend even more money than you did when you were just working in your practice, because now you have that disposable time to do more things with. So it's like you have to plan for those things. And you have to also, on the way, to sell, anything can happen on your way to selling. If an owner passes away or gets disabled during the time they're selling, that could blow up an entire deal. And then what happens to your family that you were saying, oh, you guys, you could depend on this money for my sale? What happens then? And so when I talk to, an M&A advisory firm, I'm trying to work with them to help them understand, like, these are questions that you need to be asking, because your deal could be blown all the way up if something happens. And it's not a sexy topic. We don't like to talk about it, but that's why it's called risk management.
Yeah. Name for a reason. Yeah. What should, whether it's med spas or just normal plastic surgery, just aesthetic practices, be thinking about? Look, we think about the startup phase, the growth phase, the mature phase, or when they're ready, like we're talking about, when they want to exit, but they're not prepared. Is there this guide? What should they be doing in these different sectors of their phases of their business?
Well, I mean, it's like you should be doing a lot of these things at every different stage, but it's like when you're starting up, you definitely want to make sure that you have things buttoned up. I'm talking about just from a risk management perspective. You need to make sure that you have your personal disability insurance in place. You need to make sure you have your personal life insurance in place. You need to make sure, since most things are going to be collateralized to your name, that you also have a way to pay those things if something happens, and you don't want, if it is personally collateralized to you, then your family is going to have to foot the bill for all those things. And these machines aren't cheap. These devices aren't cheap or what have you. So when you're starting out, it's even more important to have those things. And if you have key employees, and so in the startup phase, you're not really going to have those things. But then in the growth stage, when you're starting to, bring on new employees and things like that, then you're really going to want to establish a really good employee benefits plan. You're going to want to make sure that you're retaining key people. So say you have a practice manager who, if she wasn't there, you would fall off the face of the earth. You better make sure she's compensated well, obviously, number one. And then you also want to make sure that if something happens to her, you have a means to replace her with someone so good afterward and you want to make sure the business is going to be financially whole, in the startup phase. And then the more mature phase, you're going to be looking at things like, okay, my retirement strategy, I've been saving, I've been doing these things all this time, but what can I do to ensure that I'm actually going to have enough assets for when I'm getting maybe getting closer to my exit. And so you should be thinking about the end in mind from when you start. But the way that you approach those things are probably going to be different, because in the startup phase, you're kind of reinvesting in the business. In the mid stage, you're, still reinvesting in the business. In the growth stage, and you're like, oh, I have some more disposable assets and income that I could start really doing things with and planning smart. So you should be doing all those things from the beginning, but it's just as you go on, you kind of build on your program.
So important. And this is such an interesting question I'm going to ask you, because, we've built, over 100 medical aesthetic practices, myself and my team. And obviously we have that part now of the Apex program from a startup perspective. But when, and I'm saying it this way because whether somebody is startup or I guess in the mature phase, it's easier when you're in the more growth and mature phase because you have more money, right, to spend. And a lot of people that are in the startup phase, I don't think that they actually recognize how much it actually cost. And I don't mean just brick and mortar and equipment and marketing and all, right? Me, you, but so if these stats that you just said were so high that people don't have these things, who should be part of the wealth team? What does that look like? Who are the members of this wealth team that these practices should have?
Yeah.
Be working with?
So a part of your wealth team, of course, you definitely want to have a great business consultant, Terri's team.
Do you guys know anybody?
I wonder. Oh my God. But you definitely want to have a coach, someone who's been there, done that, can help you track your numbers, things like that. So you're definitely going to want to have that. Not even secondarily, but as important, you're going to want a good financial advisor. And just remember, a financial advisor doesn't always do risk management. Sometimes they only do asset management. So they're so focused on your investments and how much assets you have under management with them, they're not looking at the risk side and your business overall. So then it's good to also have, someone that's really focused on risk management, and that's their specialty, or your financial advisor might do all encompassing, but it's really important to have that person that does it as their specialty. Typically, an insurance advisor or risk management advisor is going to be kind of playing like the quarterback role and kind of making sure that all pieces are working together. Of course, you're going to want to have a good CPA. Of course, you're going to want to have a good bookkeeper. Of course, you're going to want to have a good attorney, but not just any attorney. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to use my real estate attorney to draft my estate documents. No. Just like you in medicine, you have your specialty. You need to make sure you're working with people who specialize in estates and trusts, and they do this every single day. And same thing, yes. And in the business succession and planning attorney, in many cases, is going to be the same one as the estate planning attorney.
When people work with you, and I'll ask you that question next, but do you ever get clients? Kind of, you just gave that analogy. Like some people just be like, oh, my real estate attorney can do it, or whoever, right? Do you find people that end up working with you, or that you might be doing a discovery call with a client to figure out what they need? Do you find often that they either not even just don't have it, what you offer, or it's wrong, like all wrong because they had somebody inappropriate do it or not the right skill set to do it?
Funny thing is, so Kathleen Cassidy, she's a JD on our team. So all she does, all she's paid to do, she works with a bunch of advisors, is literally review estate documents and business succession planning documents. And she finds mistakes all the time because that's literally her job. And because we do offer, that review, that complimentary review, so you can actually see in layman's language or laywoman's language what your estate plan actually says. And so she reviews those things and she finds the holes in it, right? But I do find that people either, and it's not your fault if you don't have it buttoned up, because that's not your expertise. So I don't want this to be like a blame game. If you don't have this buttoned up, it's not your expertise. Your lawyer should be doing the proper things for you. But I think the biggest thing, when I do find someone that does have it done, they just haven't reviewed it in like years and years. I found someone, she had her ex-husband still as a beneficiary on her estate documents. I was like, ma'am, that's probably not what you want. I was just,
Right.
Like,
Get him out, right?
Get him out. So it's just like, so I would say in more cases than one, it is not done. It's just not done at all, especially in the growth stage, new stage. You see it a little bit more in the mature exit phase that it's done. But what I see secondarily is that it just hasn't been reviewed in a very long time.
And how do you, because now we're going to, we're kind of coming to wrapping things up, but how do you, I love, you guys all know, if you're part of my Apex tribe and family, clients get, a private consultant, there's 10 hours of group coaching and there's master classes. And I think, Leslie, right, you're going to be coming on to do a masterclass. And so how do we, I know you and I have been friends for a long time, and how do you interface the best with people like me, consultants? And then, we'll talk about the, again, what you're providing to the Apex clients, because it's just value, right? Nothing we do is everything we do, I should say, is everything we do is intentional. And I work with people who can deliver what I don't and bring the greatest value, so you guys are protected. And so how have you really, you've built your career with, what I love about you too is just, your truth, your authenticity, your honesty, your expertise. I love that about you. And so how have you found what makes you successful and why you're different? And then we'll talk about how clients can kind of get in touch with you and work with you.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of have a chip on my shoulder, especially a little bit more recently. It's like, coming from a family where it's like, everyone's doing something at a very high level. Like my mom's a superintendent, my dad's a minister, like, you're always expected to achieve and to do. So it's like, I kind of, my business, Tracey Donovan, is named after my dad, and his name is Donovan Tracey. So it's, I know. But, for me, why I am so passionate about this and why I choose to just focus solely on the risk management, and my why was kind of renewed because my brother-in-law passed away, a year and a half ago at age 43. He got a stroke.
Sorry. Yeah.
And so I saw how that affected my sister. They had just bought a new home together. They have 3 children. They're married 20 years. And he was the breadwinner and he was gone.
Oh God, I'm so
And
sorry.
I still have the quotes that I gave them because I was trying to help them do some stuff. And they were like, oh, we'll do it a little bit later. They kept on pushing it off. And I keep that in my email to my sister. I'm like, wow, I did not do what I had to do. So when I see these women in the industry, because I work with a lot of women or, people that I work with, I'm just like, you need to make sure this gets done. Investment management is super important too. But what is that if everything is also just going to burn down if you weren't in the picture? So that is why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. And my passion got renewed with my own personal experience, because it's one thing to just do it. Absolutely. It's another thing for it to actually affect your own family. So
God, no. Well, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. I mean, well, Leslie, again, it was such an honor to have you. This topic is, like you said, not sexy and probably undervalued. She dropped some very high stats about people that just don't have this. And so how can people get in touch with you? I know you mentioned you kind of have a quick resource for the listeners. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what I'll have is basically just a risk management checklist. So you can kind of go through and say, am I buttoned up here? Am I buttoned up there? Yeah. And if any of those things are no, if you have an advisor, reach out to them if they specialize in risk management. If they've never talked to you about any of those things on that list before, you can, of course, reach out to me. Our team, we are taking on new clients. And so it's just like www.traceydonovan.com is our website, and you can fill out an intake form there. But everything starts really chill. It's just a matter of the first meeting is a vibe check. We just want to make sure that you are a nice person and that we'll get along, because we work with our clients for a long time, and then we do an intake, and then we do a strategy call, and then we, and then we provide some solutions, and then it's kind of a long working process. And how we interface with consultants like Terri or what have you, we do the personal planning first to make sure that's buttoned up. And then when we start looking on the business risk management side and looking at all the holes, we do offer an 18 key drivers assessment. So that 18 key drivers assessment looks at the things that you should be looking at to make sure your business is kind of buttoned up. And then I'm like, okay, you need to talk to Terri about this because we don't do that, but you're not buttoned up there. That's how we kind of interface with consultants. And I have a whole network of estate planning attorneys and business succession planning attorneys around the country. And I build that network on a weekly basis to make sure that they are specializing in what you need.
Yeah. Well, I love it, girl. Well, listen, we are soul sisters. Thank you so much. Always so honored to work with you, to have you on the show. And for those of you guys, I hope that you found this valuable. If you're listening, please share this with a friend. Drop me a line. Your feedback to me is always so important. And all of these links will be in the show notes to get a hold of Leslie. And you're going to want to do that. I think her resources, please take advantage of these things. They're so important. And as always, if you'd like to stay updated on all of our upcoming events, our conferences, our platform updates, newsletters, all the amazing resources we have on the website, please follow us, as you guys know, TerriRossConsulting.com or Apex platform. Leslie, you're the bomb. Always love you, sis. Thank you so much for being here to talk about such an important topic. And I love you guys. I will see you on the next episode of In Touch with Terri. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to In Touch with Terri. We invite you to schedule a discovery call with our Apex team. The link to apexplatform.com can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of In Touch with Terri.